guys? How was that? For those of you who don't know me or who last saw me when I was about this big, my name is Dave Strobel, and I'm the Brookwoods director this summer. And this is Mary Beth Bowling, who's directing Year Run. And we are going to be kind of helping, I guess, to guide you through the evening and in a conversation with some very special guests who've come a long way, and we know a lot about the history of the camp. And we're excited about it. We're really looking forward to that. We thought we might kind of begin tonight by telling you about something that we've done during Staff Week. We did it actually the first time this year, which was when all of the staff comes in about a week and a half before camp. We try to kind of get to know each other, to hear the stories of what's been happening during the last year of these people's lives. And so we had them each at one point bring an object up to Year Run Live where we sat, and had everyone in a group of about 5 or 6 tell a story about some object and how that reflected where they were. So I have a couple objects actually that I brought with me tonight.
What's that, David?
This goes deep into my past here. Some of you who've been at Brookwoods may recognize the significance of this without me even saying it. But there is an extinct tradition at Brookwoods, which was, and we mentioned it this morning, that if you lost a certain number of items of clothing around camp, and those were found and brought to the chapel, usually when all the rest of the camp congregated, you would be asked to stand up and assume a position about like this. At which point, my father, Uncle Miles, would then, like Bill Grogan's goat, for those of you who know the song, give you a whack, and didn't tie you to a railroad track, but that usually got some big smiles and laughs from the rest of the campers and so forth. Well, I lived as a kid who grew up here from when I was basically born. I lived in great fear of the day that the paddle and I would have a close experience together. And it so happened that I actually didn't have this hat, but it seems to suit the occasion. I had mislaid my baseball cap. Oh. All right. And sure enough, as the clothes were taken out one at a time, and those of you who are here before the what we still call the new wing, it's about 10 years old, but before this wing was added on, the staff tables used to line up right along those back two windows, at least when I remember. And I was sitting at the staff table as about a 6-year-old when my baseball hat came out of the bag. And I didn't stop before I was out by the chapel. And that was one of my dad and my first conversations when he said, David, don't you know I wouldn't have hit you very hard? And I had no clue that he wouldn't have hit me hard. And, or at least I wasn't going to take any chances finding out. So those are my objects. Mary Beth?
The object that I brought with me this evening that talks about kind of how I feel about camp, or at least a memory for me about camp, is my deer pin. And many of you women who are sitting out there are wearing your silver deer this evening, and many have said, oh, I should have brought my deer pin. For those of us at Deer Run, it's a tradition that if you complete the CIT program, you receive a silver deer pin. And it's a very special occasion to all of us. And it represents for me this evening the fact that there's an amazing heritage here. I've seen all women that I don't even know with their deer pins on this evening, and they've come before me, and they are the people who laid the foundation for me. And as Allison Grimm-Ballantyne was explaining to the campers just a minute ago, she said, I'm the grandmother to you campers. She is a CIT director, and she's had many CITs come through her program who are now counselors. And she said, they are ministering to you as campers. And that's sort of how I feel. There are women who have come before me, and men as well, who have really impacted my life. And they have passed on traditions and their love and Christ's love to me. And I, in turn, am able to pass that on to others. So that's what my deer pin represents for me. We're glad you're here this evening. And we have a packed evening, and we are going to try and keep things moving as we go along so you don't get too hot and too tired sitting there.
Just to help us, I'm sure that the stories will flow very easily tonight, and we won't bring this out unless it's really necessary. We do have the matchbox for the fireplace here. And the deal will be that you'll get a certain grace period if you're one of the people who are going to be speaking tonight. And then if it gets to be the point where Mary Beth or my discretion, things are going, maybe people are getting edgy, we'll hold the match in a variety of positions. If it's like this, you can talk until we can't hold it anymore, basically, is the way it works. And at that point, we'll graciously ask you to bring your comments to a close and we'll move on. So the match principle, and if those of you think we should get to that earlier, feel free to call it out and we'll do that. Thanks, Rebecca. So you can see we like this. We'd like to start this evening by asking George Bennett to come and speak to us for a few moments. George is the former president of the board of directors, father, I guess, of 3 Brookwoods campers, and a host of grandkids who come to the camp, and he has a few thoughts for us to begin the evening.
looked at the program tonight for the first time. It said reflections. And I thought, what does that mean? And you looked at the program too and it says reflections. So I knew that you could see a reflection in the mirror, so I went and looked in the mirror. I didn't like what I saw, and it didn't help a bit. So I still don't know what reflections are. But maybe I'll make a few comments about Brookwoods and our connection with it. Dave said this morning something about generations. I forgot just what connection it was. But I thought in our family there were 4 generations that have had a deep interest in Brookwoods. First, that's Helen and myself. We weren't campers, but we were the father and mother of 3 sons who were campers. And they were the fathers of 10 grandchildren, all of whom attended Brookwoods or near run. And either as campers or CITs or counselors or staff members. And this year, we have our oldest great-grandson, who is a camper. I don't think he's there tonight, but his father and mother are here. So we have had a real deep family interest in both Brookwoods and Deer for many years. When we heard 20 years ago that Doc A was not going to be able any longer to continue with Camp Brookwoods and was looking for a way to continue it, but had been unable to do so, and had sold the camp to was in the process of selling it to a developer. Peter and I contacted Dr. Andreson, and he said, it's too bad we didn't talk earlier because it's really too late. I have signed the papers and the camp has now been sold to Joe Hyde as a development. And Peter and I said, well, do you think we could talk to Joe Hyde? And Doc A said, well, yes, there's no reason you couldn't, but he said I wouldn't encourage you too much that anything could be done because he spent a lot of money laying out the camp, the development and doing the borings and getting the plans approved and so forth. But he said, I'll make contact for you, and he did make contact with Joe Hyde. And Peter and I went down to Hartford to meet with Joe. And Joe pretty much repeated what Doc A had said, that he had laid out the development, he had partners in the business, and he thought it was very unlikely that there was anything that could be done to keep it as a camp. He said, I would like to see it as a camp, and I think he had at least one son attend here. But he says there's just no way financially that it can be done because our investment in it and in the partners that we have. And we said, well, would you talk to your partners and we'll come down to Hartford and see you a week from now. And he said, yes, I'll do that, but I don't want to give you much encouragement. So Peter and I went back, and we talked to Bob, who was director of Camp Brookwoods under the Latin American Mission in Costa Rica, and we said, Bob, if we are able to buy Camp Brookwoods, how would you feel about coming back and being director of the camp? And he thought about it, prayed about it, and the answer was yes. So we went down to see Joe a week later, Joe Hyde. And he was a changed man. He was different. I sometimes don't get through this story, but I'm going to try. It's the closest thing to a miracle and a direct answer to prayer than anything I've ever seen. His attitude was he was a different person. And he said to us, I think maybe there is a possibility. And he said, I had a strange thing happen this week, that I had a dream. Hold it up. He said, I dreamed I was walking over the Brookwoods trails and grounds, and suddenly I noticed there was somebody walking with me. And this person said, Joe Hyde, this cannot be a real estate development. It's got to stay as a camp. And he said, the person walking side of me was the Lord Jesus Christ. And he said, and he just kind of blew up and he said, I don't want to be struck down by lightning. You can buy the camp. To raise the money. He had an investment in it, and the price was higher than if we'd been wise enough to talk with Doc A in the first place, which we weren't. But anyhow, from there we organized a non-profit organization, and our purposes were threefold: educational, charitable, and religious. And the Internal Revenue Service granted us a tax-free certificate, so we then would be relieved of real estate taxes. We were able to handle the financing in a number of ways. Anyhow, we were able to make the purchase. Then we had to close the camp. This was in the spring, and we really couldn't open the camp because no one thought it was going to be open. They thought it was sold. So we had to close the camp for a year in order to kind of get things organized, and also there was quite a lot of deferred maintenance because the camp was going to be shut down as a camp, and a lot of things for us to do. So we did close it down for a year and then opened it up as a camp the following year. In the meantime, this tax exemption that we were granted by the federal government was not recognized by the town of Alden, and they continued to tax us. So one of the economies that we hoped we would have seemed to be disappearing. We appealed it to the state tax board, and they agreed with the town, because they go in and above anyhow, because it's all tax relief for the state of New Hampshire. So we took it to the circuit court in Laconia. Peter and Bob and I were, I think we all three testified. The judge happened to be a Harvard Law School graduate, and I at that time was treasurer of Harvard, so we got along pretty well. Jerry and Miles made a movie, a film of the camp, and we asked the judge if we could show it in this court proceeding in Laconia. He said, well, I really can't authorize you showing it in the court hearing, but he said, if you want to show it, I will stay afterwards and watch it, which he did, in which the selectmen did not. They left. That's the greatest mistake they ever made, as if they wanted to tax us, because here's the judge staying and they walked out. Anyhow, the judge found in our favor and reinforced that tax exemption. The town of Alden appealed it to the Supreme Court of the state of New Hampshire, and we won in the Supreme Court. So we maintained our tax exempt status, which was pretty much of a miracle. In the meantime, Bob had come up from Costa Rica, and one of his strong features, even if I do my son, I guess I can say it, is maintenance and construction. In addition to his strong spiritual commitment and leadership. And we replaced all the utilities in the camp, the water system, the electrical system. We rebuilt many of the cabins and built some new structural problems in Deer Run. The floor went up and down, and maybe some people remember, they walked on it too hard. Two people my size walked on it before the ripple. And we thought, what'll happen if 100 people go down to the basement? So we fixed that up. And other improvements that you've seen, I think, Dave, you spoke of the extension of the kitchen, and we acquired Mrs. Mooney's property, first the hen house and then the house itself, and more recently Dr. A's property, and then the parents' property, whatever it is, the guy who lived across the street there, and the mom's property. We now have pretty much refurbished, rebuilt the camp, and expanded the facility. That's a little bit of a historical sketch. I have some notes here, but I'm not going to refer to them because I might talk too long. I have already. But let me just say that being connected with Camp Brookwoods in this way has been a high point, one of the high points certainly of my lifetime. And to see boys and girls' lives change through coming to Brookwoods and see the way the counselors and the CITs have worked with the young people, it's really been the most rewarding thing I know of. I just want to close with one story that would impress me in a way I'll never forget. And Miles, this was, where is Miles?
Over there.
Over this side? Oh, this was at the campfire between the outgoing July campers and the incoming August campers. I think it was the bonfire where you had the awards given, and I attended. I was up here for that and sat in the background, and this was mainly all Brookwoods, I think. These young boys anywhere from age 9 up to maybe 13 or 14 were testifying as to what camp had meant to them. But the thing that really moved me was as the award program progressed, it turned into a prayer meeting. These little youngsters, I guess you wouldn't call a 15 or 14-year-old a youngster, but 8, 9, and up, were praying for the incoming campers for the month of August. And that was one of the most moving things that I have ever experienced. And if that was the only thing that ever happened, it would all be worthwhile. Thanks very much.
Could you stand up too? I think you've been in on this and probably coached everyone through a little bit. Camp wouldn't be camp without a skit, and we've hired some of our very best to come back and recreate, if I'm correct, what it's like to come to camp in the 1990s. So wherever you are, come on up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome you aboard Reunion Airlines Flight 5030 with non-stop service to Chestnut Cove, Alton, New Hampshire. Before taking off, we'd like to review the safety features of the 03809 Airbus. To fasten your seatbelt, simply insert the metal end into the buckle and pull the strap to tight. Lift up on the buckle to release. In case we experience a loss of cabin pressure, an oxygen mask will automatically drop from the ceiling. To activate, simply place the mask over your nose and mouth. Place the elastic band around your head and pull to tighten. Breathe normally. If you are traveling with a small child or John Pooley, please secure your mask first and then attend to the needs of your child or John Pooley. We'd like to remind you that according to FAA regulations, this is a non-smoking flight. When the captain has illuminated the seatbelt sign, please remain in your seats with your seatbelt securely fastened. There are 6 emergency exits on this Airbus. There are 2 in the front, 2 over the wings, and 2 in the rear. Once again, 2 in the front, 2 over the wings, and 2 in the rear. Please locate the emergency exit nearest your seat, and keep in mind that the nearest exit may be behind you. In case of an emergency water landing into Lake Winnipesaukee, your seat cushion also doubles as a small prop. In preparation for takeoff, please put your seat backs and tray tables and John Pooley in the full upright and locked position. Once again, thank you for choosing Reunion Airlines. Sit back and enjoy your flight. And remember, Mark, spelling counts.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking off in just a moment. We have a couple of last-minute passengers getting on board.
I'm sorry. I almost missed my flight.
You know, we are about to take off.
I'm sorry. Are
you ready to fasten your seatbelts? Ready to take off?
We're ready to go. Ready to go.
Did you have a problem packing your gear?
Yes, I did.
I mean, all that stuff, where are you going?
I'm going to my camp reunion. You probably never heard of it. It's like a really great camp.
Oh, I went to camp.
You did? Where?
We're going to read.
You are?
Yeah.
I used to go to a girls' camp. Camp to run, camp boom, 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 boom.
Shut up!
Now, please stay in your seats while we take off. Everyone hang on. Well, you know, I have so many fond memories of camp. I mean, from the days that it started as just a boys' camp, with Doc A and Dougie, up until the present time with, hundreds of girls and boys having a great time at the waterfront and the climbing wall. I mean, what a great group of people that we were with. Isn't it terrific to go back and celebrate again?
It's the best. You guys ready for the cheer?
Kimosabe! Kimosabe!
Get out your baggage. Ma'am, be careful.
Do you see my guitar?
The fasten seatbelt sign.
Do you see my guitar?
I don't know. I can check with the pilot. Is there a problem?
I might have checked it. I'm not sure. I have to have my guitar because I'm going to sing with Becca.
You're going to sing with Now, do you have all your other gear and things?
Yeah, I think so.
It kind of smells around here. There's something, kind of a strange sense of old clothing and polyester. Oh my goodness. Anything else? Anything else that you packed?
Baseball mittens.
You guys bring fishing nets?
Yay! They're in the cargo hold down with Uncle George. He's going to take us out at 5:30.
Me too, I called him. He's
Yeah.
totally taking us fishing at 5:30.
Preparation for Shaboom.
Uncle George, oh what a blast.
I don't know if it's too much trouble, but do you have a needle and thread on this
A
airline?
needle and thread. Well, we are very happy to help you, but why would you need a needle and thread?
Well, I forgot to sew my labels in my underwear, and I'm afraid I'm going to get paddled.
Well, never fear, because I don't think that they do that anymore, but if they did, I'm sure the paddle would look much more like this.
Oh, wouldn't hurt.
That's not the paddle I had. Never hurt me.
Okay, the food service will be beginning in just a moment. Excuse me, ma'am, I'm going to need to get by here with the food. Please, your things out of the aisle.
Sorry, just tying up a few loose ends.
What run, get older and more mature. I've heard they're even letting the director and the unit directors ride the three-wheelers. You think we'll get to take a ride?
I hope so. I think we will.
I think we will too.
Maybe.
No.
I
Tradition.
don't know. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
Whoa, whoa! I got the green gizmo in my jello! You know what that means?
No store. Well, let me collect your plates here. You'll have to refasten your seatbelts here.
I want to take a few pictures for you, Karen.
Well, really quickly, we're really about to everybody. Everybody's laugh. Okay, everybody say Miles. Ladies and gentlemen, please bring your seat back to tray table to the full upright line position. We're about to land, and make sure those seatbelts are fastened. You never know what's going to happen. Oh, it's so great to be here. You know, I have a great idea. Why don't I take you all with me to the reunion?
Sweet! I was going on C&J.
No more seeing.
Yeah. Rocky picking you up. I bet he will.
All right.
Okay, well, let's go see who else is over at the reunion.
All right.
Oh.
Years ago Brookwoods was born. Only men and boys of woodland song. It was a no-no, now we wear polo. We summered up here for the longest time. Oh, what fun those first years were to be. At the place all to ourselves, you see. We ran a great ship, could even skinny dip. We haven't done it for the longest time. Whoa, for the longest time. Whoa, for the longest time.
64 was another great big year. Next to the brook there came a white-tailed deer.
Oh,
It took a while,
obviously, I guess I didn't really finish my story back to the beginning, so I'm going to go back to the paddle. Remember that in the little hat that I lost? Because one of the things that I think is very special about camp, and maybe that story, is the way that things at camp become magnified. I don't know if any of you are coming back to camp. Some places look a lot bigger than normal, perhaps, and other places probably look a lot smaller, particularly if you haven't been here in quite a while. And I think there's that magic about camp, which just makes those early experiences in life very, very significant for those who have the privilege of being campers. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why the whole thought of there being a camp, the whole sense of there being a vision to start a camp, is equally as big a step. And I know almost all of you have met or have seen Dake and Dougie, but they are obviously the ones who started and who had the birth of the vision to begin this place. And we would not be here if it weren't for them. And so I'd like, first of all, if both Dake and Dougie would just stand for a moment, and we'd like to just express our love and thanks to you right now.
Stand one half of that day just coming down and meeting the boys, which I never did. Although I got to know most of you, I never came down actually, put my arms around you and said, I love you. Another amazing thing was this, that in all of the years that we had the camp, we were always respected and always grateful that the campers were here. And I'm very, very happy to say that these years that we had together, 33 years, were wonderful years. Now, one other mistake I think that has been made, and that is that Dr. Winsell, who will speak to you in just a few minutes, he indicated, the indication was that I started the camp. Actually, it was a merger of his vision and mine. And I want you to remember that. That actually it was me that would have to take the responsibility of financing the camp as it was a private camp, as Camp DeWitt, Camp Fabian, Camp Wyandotte, Camp Camp Alton now, all of those camps which were privately operated, have all closed their doors. The only camp in existence along this side of the lake, up and above Center Harbor, there is no other camp excepting the organizational camps, such as the one that is run by the Boy Scouts up in the northern part of the lake. And you've got some questions, and I'll be glad to try to answer them as well as I can.
One thing we asked was just, what were your reasons for just starting it in the beginning? What you talked about now, a sense of a merger of two ideas. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The beginning actually probably occurred when I was in the scouting system, and I grew up as a scout. Scoutmaster at the end didn't make my ego, but I came pretty close to it. But it was those years that we climbed on Chicago with 7 tires. And it was those years that we well remember. The first time we ever started at the base of the Piper Trail at Chicago, I shall never forget, when we got off at October the 12th, holiday weekend, a wildcat jumped right on the Little Star and broke the front window. I tell you, this is the way we started. Those were the years that actually I realized too that the organizational camps throughout this part of the country actually were not private camps. We could not. Most of the individuals who wanted to send their boys to camp would have to go to one of the secular camps, because the organizational or the interdenominational camps, they didn't have the organization or the money actually to run a camp. Therefore, there were many of middle class and older wealthy Christian people who just loved the Lord, who had no opportunity of sending their children to any camp other than a secular camp. And that was one of the reasons why actually we started with it.
Tell us, Dake, about how you decided on this property. How did that come about?
This is more or less of a longer story, but I will try to cut it as short as I possibly can. I was a radiologist at Somerville Hospital and at St. Hospital in Arlington. When I started my practice, I came out of Lenox Hill Hospital the day after Pearl Harbor. They came over the radio the fact that they needed medical assistance. And so I volunteered, and upon volunteering, they noticed that I had no eardrum on my left ear. And at that time, they said that there would be no possibility of you entering this service at this time. So the government put me into selective service, and there I stayed throughout my medical practice while the war was still going on. Harold, on the other hand, may tell you something about his experience there, but he came out of a meeting that we had together. He had been Wheaton graduate as I had been, and he went to Harvard and got his master's degree, I believe, there. He took some units on his PhD degree, but finished his training in New York University. And there it was that we used to walk through Central Park in New York and talking about the possibility of starting a camp. But at the time when I really got ahead of the story, and I should have mentioned that when we talked about it, we had no idea that Pearl Harbor was going to exist. When Pearl Harbor came, then we realized that when the government turned us both down, that we had an opportunity of starting camp.
So how, again, did this property come into the picture?
This property came into the picture in a very remarkable way, in that one of the trustee members at Somerville Hospital was the owner of the Ford dealership in Somerville, and he had an amputated leg from the First World War, came up here to open up a real estate office. That day we had looked over property in Samoset across the lake, and when we came back on this side of the lake, we were vacationing up at Bonnier Camps at the end of Lake Winnipesaukee, and we were due to leave there on Saturday. He took us around on Friday, and Saturday morning we actually viewed several other places, including Samoset, ruled Samoset out because the railroad crossing went right across the beach area and right.
We make a blog of that, right?
Yeah. So that when we were coming back, he stopped on the way and he said, Dake, he said, we're going to make a listing. I want to make a listing here with a Mrs. Damon for her property. And I would like very much to go down and make that listing now. And so I said, well, we're late to get back to Bonnier Camps. We've got to leave there at 12:30, and the folks are already probably out of there having packed. And we had packed previously and put things in the trunk just in the event that we were going to be delayed. He said there are I believe there are two roads. And the Chestnut Cove Road is a horseshoe road. And that, I had no interest in that. I didn't know that there was a Chestnut Cove Road. And so I said to him, because of the time that he had spent at Camp Samoset, I said to him, yes, if there is a second road, I will allow you to go down to the camp. but I didn't want to back up or turn around. And I certainly didn't know that there was such a place in existence at that time. There are times in my life when I never knew whether or not God was speaking to me personally, or whether or not I could tell that God actually was moving me in one direction or another. But I do know very clearly then that God was in the picture from the very beginning when we saw Brookwoods. We came down this place here that you're sitting in was completely open in the middle, and as Mrs. Damon was talking with Mr. Mixer very close to the door there, she indicated that the property had been sold. That very much like when Mr. Bennett actually was explaining his end of it from his standpoint, and which was beautifully done. But the thing is that when Mrs. Damon said that, when Mixer said, well, how do you know? Is the deed been signed? He said, no. The judge who had been vacationing here from New York for 3 summers, he had wanted to buy the property. And when the property actually was not signed, why, and the lawyer was coming in the next Monday in order to look the property over, had to sign the sales and purchase agreement from the judge, that indicated to Mr. Mixer that actually it might change. And so he wanted to go over the lines, he wanted to see the acreage, and at that moment I had a chance to look into this building. And when I looked into the building with Dougie, this is all open in the center, and we could see the rafters up above, which are all put together by Morrison Tennant. And they weren't pins put in, but they were put in such a way that they were just beautiful, beautiful rafters, about 8 or 9, 10 inches square. And this went right up to the cupolas. And now, in that day, I found out later that a fellow by the name of Doc from New York had come in here and had oxen with him, and that this building had been built at that time in about 1909, 1907. The whole front of this building was set back with 2 cupolas. You'll notice that. And the more money that an individual had in those days, the main house was always front, and the barn was always on the side. And the deeper the barn was in the main house, the more money he had put into these buildings. And this was a remarkable history from that standpoint, because it meant to me that this place had been built properly, but there was no odor of any animal. There was no hay in the lot. And I knew that as we looked at the inside of that in that moment, and we stood there listening to Mr. Damon and Mr. Mixer, that at that time, that there was no doubt but this would just start the camp in the proper way. Up in the stage area upstairs, for those that have been there, they were the servants' quarters, and those 3 rooms were used to house our first 8 campers the first year. The second year and the third year, we moved around the whole outside perimeters of the building, and we put petitions in, and our camp began to grow step by step.
Okay, how many campers did you have that first summer?
The first summer we had 8 campers. The second summer was On May 31st of that summer, I brought up two of my secretaries and three of my technicians, and it was at that time that we were taking the Great Marine boat, which is in the boathouse. And in the boathouse, I had a nephew who actually was slightly mentally deficient, and he had a can filled with gas, and he poured the gas into the boat without a funnel. We didn't know that, of course, as we come down and went into the boat. We couldn't smell any gas at all. The floor of the boat was perfectly solid, plus the fact that the doors are open in both the side and the door in which we were going to leave the boat through. And at that time, the boat exploded, and I was the driver in the seat, and my head secretary, my head technician, sat beside me. The had gone on fire. I had no alternative but to put it out with my hand. And at that time, of course, my eyebrows, my eyelids, and the hair that I had left on my head was all gone. And it was at that time that that two of the girls actually had broken bones. One of them went into shock, sitting outside on one of the rocks. The third one that had her hair burned, she actually a year later died from malignant hypertension. So it was a very dreadful accident. We were taken into Huggins Hospital, where, by the way, I finished up my radiology work at Huggins years later when I was 81 years of age. And it's an amazing thing. We went into the corridor. They didn't have any rooms there then, and but they called Harold first. I wanted Harold to know it, and Harold indicated then that he wondered whether or not God was leading us in a direction not to open the camp. Remember, we had eight campers booked up, and several of those were from our own family, and others were from Dagmar's brother's Sunday school class in the Swedish Covenant Church in Forest Hills. The main thing in all of this was the fact that as we reviewed the whole history behind this, that in all probability we should have closed the camp right then. But I received a letter, a telegram rather, from my mail technician back in Lexington, and he indicated that you have always told us that God actually doesn't stop working when he is bringing you through suffering. And that was absolutely true. And upon that telegram alone, I made the decision to keep the camp open. That was May 31st, and that next month we received 24 more applicants for camp. So we opened the next year with 28 camps.
Doc, can we fast forward then to the decision then to a few years later to open up year round? Can you tell us what was behind that decision and how you came to that?
Year on with another story. There's another story because we had two boys who were in the camp. We had a young daughter who was just beginning to grow up, and she was now about 10, 11 years of age. So there was one reason why we opened the camp. Secondly, it took me 7 years to make a decision on their own. But once the decision had been made, there was no doubt that it was the wisest decision next to the carried us through some very difficult times. And the boys, the parents of the boys, they didn't want to come to camp, but they didn't want their children to come to camp a month. They wanted to spend some of their time with their own children on vacation. And so there was a transitional period for us during that time. The girls, on the other hand, came in, gave us the bounce that we needed from the number of campers that came in. And there's no doubt that this actually entered into this very much.
One of the other ways that we date periods of time at camp is whether you were before or after JJ. JJ is going to do his best. I'll tell you, as a boys camp director, he's still my ace in the hole when we need a campfire. JJ is the one we turn to for some singing, and JJ, why don't you lead us, warm us up with a couple of the camp songs that we've sung over the years?
JJ Jingleheimer Schmidt. I just have to John Jacob. That way. And we sing it 4 times. First time very loud, second time soft, third time a whisper. Fourth time there's no noise at all except the out and the shout and the da 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 da. Okay? So this hand is out. Okay, let's hear it. Out! No, it's got to be out, out, okay? Out! And this is shout, shout. And this is da 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 da. Okay, get shout. Are you with me? Out! Shout! Okay, and the words are John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. His name is my name too. When we go out, out, don't always shout, shout. John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Da 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 da. John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. His name is my name too. And whenever we go out. I say I am the maestro singer, and you say he is the maestro singer. I am the maestro singer, I come from Deutschland. He is the maestro singer, he comes from Deutschland. And I can play. And I can play. On my trombone. On my trombone. And then we play on the trombone. Oompa, 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 pa, oompa, pa, oompa, pa, oompa, 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 pa. Hey! And now shout is hey, okay? Here we go. Instruments to it. All right, here we go. I am the maestro singer, I come from Deutschland. He is the maestro singer, he comes from Deutschland. And I can play. And he can play. On my trombone. On my trombone. Oompa, 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 pa, oompa, pa, oompa, pa, oompa, 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 pa, oompa, oompa. Play it. Hey! Oompa, 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 pa, oompa, pa, oompa, pa, oompa, 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 pa, oompa, oompa, pa. Hey! I am the maestro singer, I come from Deutschland. He is the maestro singer, he comes from Deutschland. And I can play. And he can play. On my viola.
there's other talent in the Tomasian family, and I don't think, even though, whatever, with the evening, if I'm putting Jan on the spot, but if Jan and Sharon would come up, I think we need to sing the Camp Deer Run song. And those of us who don't know it, come along.
Camp Deer Run is a camp for me. Camp Deer Run is a camp for me. I'm as happy here as I can be. Now ain't that heavenly? When I remember those Deer Run days, you seem to know that those girls are great. And when the springtime Camp Deer Run is a camp for me. I'm as happy here as I can be. Now ain't that heavenly? I talked earlier about the heritage that we have here, and we are amazingly represented in that heritage this evening. And we'd like to ask all of the camp directors, past, former camp directors, to come and sit up here with us now. Sure. Let's go in order here from not oldest. From those who were here longest ago. Starting with Harold Lindsell down there, and then Link Foster, and then George Egley, Miles Strodel, Bob Bennett. Then we have Bonnie Messner. Then we have Becca Cowan Johnson, Cheryl Crawford, and Christy Newell. You guys can sit down. The only two that are missing here this evening are Herm Cruz, who co-directed with George Egley, and also Bobby Hackman, who was the original director at Camp Deer Run. We are going to ask you all some questions. We are going to begin with Dr. Harold Lindsell. David? Okay. Sure, I'll read the question. Dr. Lindsell, what we would like to hear from you is, since you were sort of a co-founder and first director, we'd like for you to tell us about that first year at camp. What was the program like? What was the staff like? Where'd you get your staff? I'm particularly interested in, how do you start a camp from ground zero? No traditions, no precedent set. And what were the difficulties in beginning Camp Brookwoods?
One can say that the history of the camp can be understood in three phases. The first phase was the time when I was there. I eventually had to give up any work at the camp because of my other responsibilities in California. And then the second phase had to do from the time I left the camp until Dr. Andreson decided to get out of the camping business. And then the third phase was when the Bennett family stepped in. Now, when we came here, we had nothing. This was a stable. They had places for horses. Down at the beach place where they had to keep boats, there were no boats there. But the best fishing I've ever seen. There were probably 1 million catfish down there in safe there. When we started, we didn't know how many students we would have in the first year at camp. It was very small in number.
We had to invent everything as we went along. We had to build everything that you see here today. We virtually had nothing except a house, the barn, and that down there with the shipyard. So we didn't have much of this world's facilities. But Dr. Andreson and I were convinced of one thing. We were convinced that we saw a vision from God, and that vision was going to be fulfilled, and we walked by faith. Now that faith was challenged from time and time again, but we always came out with the certainty that God was in this and God was moving. And we know it because we have the testimonies of multiplied numbers of people who were converted to Christ at Brookwoods Camp for Boys. Now this was before, of course, the girls' camp came into being, which came after I had already left then. But I know that many, many people have been blessed by the existence of these two camps for boys and for girls. The interesting thing was, the first year we came there, my wife came with a new baby, and the first girl camper was there. She was born then, and that girl is now 50 years old. The second baby was a girl, so we had two girls for the boys' camp, and then we had a third girl for the camp, and we had all kinds of difficulties. We had mosquitoes by the millions, and we didn't know how to get rid of them. We finally built this building into a newly shaped building. We put in a floor upstairs. We did everything we possibly could, and it took time, effort, and energy. And Dr. Andreson managed the finances of it, and I managed the management, and between the two of us, we made progress, but it was slow. The best person who helped us with getting students at camp was my wife's mother from the First Baptist Church of Hackensack, New Jersey. She went everywhere, and we had all kinds of people coming as a result of my wife's mother's labors on behalf of the camp. And it was really appreciated because she had a gift of enlargement. She could make the camp sound like it was the only camp in the world. Now, I will say this, it wasn't then, but it is today. Now, the second phase of the camp development came after I had to resign from the directorship and went on until after the time when Dr. Andreson felt that he had to get out of the camping business. And during that period, by slow growth, hard, laborious work, where everybody was doing things beyond the call of duty, the camp grew and grew and grew, and was doing very, very well. And then that was the second phase of the development of Brookwoods Camp for Boys. Now when you come to the third phase, that was when Dr. Andreson felt that the time had come for him to release his responsibilities from the camp entirely. And you heard the testimony of Mr. Bennett and how he came into the picture. Let me say that I've known Dr. Andreson and Mr. Bennett for many, many years. And they're two of God's finest Christian gentlemen. And I could get along with them. I had no difficulties with them. They were wonderful people. George Bennett and I served together on a number of boards together. We knew the family, we knew the background, and we knew this, that even as he was coming into the picture, he was only supplementing the picture that had been built by Dr. Andreson, that this was God's thing that was being done for the glory of God and for the advancement of His kingdom. That was the emphasis, and we wanted that to be there, and I'm absolutely confident that it was carried out in the days of Dr. Andreson, and it will be carried out just as well under the leadership of our friend George Bennett. Now, I know the hour is getting late, but quickly as I can do it, this is the best I can say at this moment, and good night and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lenzel, and we still have trouble with those mosquitoes. Link Foster was the next director, and Link, one of the things I have to say is, as we've gotten to know, as I've gotten to know you over the last 24 hours, is the amazing sight of within about 15 minutes of you arriving at camp, you had 3 or 4 of our beaver and woodchuck campers by the hand, and we're talking with them and sharing stories with them, and it was a real delight to see your love for kids even now. Tell us about some of the early personalities. You mentioned the name of Axel Brookwoods, and tell us a little about Axel.
Oh, Axel was a great man. He was a Swede, obviously, and he and Miss Angry put up the corner here, and we had a great time together. I always amazed at the way he got things accomplished. You to see him walking up the road, you would think he never even would get up the road. He was so slow. But boy, he could turn out the work. And you wait till the end of the day, and you would just see the work that he accomplished. He was a remarkable man. And he had a great depth of Christian faith, too. We know that because he lived with us at the Eagle for a couple of years. We would know him in the morning. We would hear him tramping around upstairs while my wife and I were sleeping and trying to get the kids to sleep. He would be tramping around, and lo, he'd come down right at 5:30, right every morning. Well, we weren't accustomed to getting up at 5:30, but we soon learned we had to, because he expected his bowl of porridge every morning, and he got it through my wife's generosity, and we had a wonderful time. We thought he was a great, great man. He was a man of few words, but his deeds spoke for him. We had him pray many times at the table, and he always had a very fervent and deep abiding love to the Lord, and it was evident in his testimony. So we appreciated him very much. And of course, Mr. Ingby too, lived up around the corner up here, and he was another stalwart. We relied on him a great deal. And he and Axel Brookwoods worked hand in hand. There was nothing they couldn't do, we found out. And the camp benefited because of that, I'm sure. My family and I lived over the Eagle over here for 4 or 5 years, and the children still remember those days. My daughter back there in the green dress is the one that benefited mostly, I think. She is carried on, and all the family benefited from it. I'm glad to say they're all born-again Christians, and they love the Lord, and we are very happy about the experiences here. We thank Brookwoods and Dr. Andreson, Mr. Andreson, for their efforts. It was well worth it for our family, and I'm sure you'll find the same thing when you reflect on it later on your families. It's been an indelible thing in their lives, and now I'm glad to say all of my children are born-again Christians, and my wife is, and I am, and we hope that all of you parents that are here will be able to say that of your children too, because they, at least in part of the experience here, acting out Christianity in practical ways.
George, I've gotten to know you over the years, not only taking me fishing at the boathouse, but on some of the wilderness trips. And that's a whole other part of camp that's grown and developed. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of camp? And I know you are a wonderful woodsman. Tell us about how that played into how important that was to camp in the early days, and then how you've seen that grow over the years. The tripping, the outdoor, the wilderness trips like you.
Well, I was very happy with everything I did at camp, and you know, I'm not really a pioneer. I like to see other people get excited, do things, and enjoy it that way. But after 2 years of these shaking, I would equip the men to go to Canada. When I saw them, the results when they came back with the fish and the stories that they had, I said, wait a minute, I got to get a piece of the action. So this is too good to miss. And so I said, look, I'm a candidate, I'd like to go. And I really enjoyed the fact, when I got into it, that we were representatives in Canada of the United States. Not only representatives of Jesus Christ, but we took young men into Canada, and I wanted them to know that when you're in another country, they are representatives. And I said, well, you guys, no matter where you are, whatever town you are, you behave yourself in whatever you do. And that's it. But what I really enjoyed was when I finally got to fishing up there, and the first night we would get out, and it was so funny. To experience this was so good. We said, after supper, you boys can just take your canoes and go out and fish. And first thing you know, oh, Uncle George, I got one. You know, you go there. Then I say, what do I do with it? And I said, throw it back. And he said, oh, it's such a big thing. It said, go in the newspaper and all. And I said, throw it back? What are you going to do with it? Oh, I can't throw this fish back. Well, anyway, I had to learn that fishing was just a sport. You left it all there for the next customers coming along. But anyway, I was really pleased to be able to go to Canada as many times as I did. One of the things I enjoyed about it, it was not just a sport. On the way up, especially with Woody, we learned scripture, and we had a chance evenings to sit down and really talk about eternal things. I came to Brookwoods in the first place as a ministry. I said to God, I want you to put me in a place where I can serve you. camps, I went to camps before, and it was just the same old story. You were in the world, and they told their jokes, and they swore, and they did, it wasn't what I wanted. I asked the Lord to put me into a Christian camp, and I couldn't believe the answer to prayer when He sent me to Brookwoods. When we came here, I have to tell you this. I said to my wife, honey, I know several Christian camps, and you couldn't exist in them, they're so bad. And I ran a couple myself that I wasn't proud of, but I said, my son's laughing at that. But the thing is, I said to my wife, look, I can take anything. Wherever we go, I said, I can last all several long. You can go home with the kids, and I'll be back. So with that attitude, we came and when I talked to Link knows that I didn't even know I was going to have eyesight when I got up there. I said bad eye trouble when I sent the letter to Link. But I'll tell you, when I came down the road to Brookwoods, and I walked out on the lawn and looked at what I had, I said, Lord, I can't believe this. What a mighty answer to prayer that was. And I just thank the Lord. There are many men here that God used wonderfully. I'm glad to have had a little piece of the action. I believe it was just a little piece. There are lots of people that did much more than I did. Thank you.
Well, this is interesting. I've waited for this for a long time. Where's the paddle when I need it? I got a little one back. Dad, as I've gotten to watch you over the years, one of the things that's been very special, and one of the things I've heard from many, many people, is that Brookwoods has had a steady direction, but that also under your leadership there's been incredible change through the times. And I guess the question that many of us would like to hear you talk about for a few moments is, how do you find that? How do you walk a straight path in the midst of programs that are changing, in the midst of a society that's changing and kids that are changing?
But first of all, you need to find a good wife. Grace and I will finish 37 years at Brookwoods this year and 46 years of camping. I started directing my first camp. I was 20 going on 21. And I mean what I said about camping today. It's a team proposition, and my wife Grace has been incredible in relation to what takes place in camping in the camping world. But actually, as far as camping, as I look through the years that it's been my privilege to minister for the Lord, I had great role models in my athletic director and football coach at Wheaton College, Harv Krauser. Harv was a man, as I was growing up, who always seemed to be 15, 20 years ahead of himself and ahead of the world in camping. He taught me lots of lessons. And then on my right and on my left, I have some mentors. That George, when I came here, I followed George to be the director. And George took me under his wing, and he gave me all kinds of advice and insight. And Bob, on the other side, as a little bit younger, but he was willing to put up with me. And in the transition process, he invited Grace and myself back to camp, to work here. As I think of camping, I've always been a great student of what I call sometimes the business of camping. So I used to spend a lot of time with my Jewish friends in the North Jersey, North Philadelphia, and Pennsylvania area. And as I was getting into camping and so forth, I would go down to some of their meetings, and I would pick out the camps. In fact, I did this several times, that were in business for 30 years, that had waiting lists of 100 or more, that were charging $4,000 to $5,000 a year. And I'd look at their directors, I'd look at their program, I'd look at what they were doing, and then I'd take that with the spiritual background that I had, and also my own family, and try to put it together that would make camp, first of all, a fun place. And then I asked the Lord to give me wisdom in hiring the staff. And what you see here this weekend is what you get, just an incredible staff of people. And it's really not me that's keeping them ahead. They're the people that are doing the job. And this is why right now we have 275 campers here and 100 staff, in addition to all you folks. You know, I just thank the Lord for it.
Bob, one of the themes during our staff week this year was turning points. Turning points in our lives that we reflected on in our own personal walks with God and other circumstances. And probably if there was a key turning point in the life of Brookwoods and Deer Run after it was founded, it was the year that it was closed, and then you came back to bring it back to life and to begin it as an operation. Can you tell us about what that was like in those next years when, as I remember, we were around 30 campers, and we ate over in about this third of the dining hall. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my dad shared some of the story. Maybe I can share a little of my side of the story, because I was about 5,000 miles away from here when it all began. Though I'd been actually, the first 3 men here were here, and when I was a camper, and I worked with Miles as a counselor, and I came back and we worked together later. So we quite a bit of heritage there. But I was in Costa Rica, and I believe my dad had come down for a New Year's and spent the time with us. And I loved Costa Rica. I became almost more Costa Rican than I did North American. Even my language was my English was a translation of Spanish. And I said something I never should have said, and that was this: I love Costa Rica. I'm never going to leave, except if I can work in camping full time. That was the wrong thing to say. And my dad said, well, I don't know, it's interesting. I think Brookwoods is for sale. And I said, uh-oh. But, and he looked into it, and kind of an excitement grew, because it was like about a period of probably 2 or 3 weeks, and just kind of excitement, just thinking, let it kind of running through, because I love Brookwoods, and if there's any place in the world I'd want to come back and work, it was Brookwoods. And Deer Run, I didn't know an awful lot about Deer Run, I was just here as a counsel when Deer Run was here. And I got really excited about it until I talked to my dad on the radio one day. I had a ham radio, and he said, well, I talked to Doc A, and there's no possibility of the property being purchased. And as high as I went in the excitement, I took a nosedive, and I said, that's so strange. I'm just so excited about this. How could this ever be? Lord, why did you get me all excited? And then just kind of dropped me off the edge. I walked into a friend's house. That was on Tuesday. I walked into a friend's house on Thursday who was in a small Bible study with me, and he said, you know, I've been feeling like you're going to leave the country. I said, what, leave the country? He said, yeah, I don't know why, but I feel like you're going to be leaving the country. I told him the story, and I said, well, I really feel the Lord wants to do this. I can't talk either. It's hereditary. And I said, but, and just as a fleece was placed in Scripture, and I put the fleece out, and it wasn't wet that night, and then I put out the next night, everything else was dry, and the fleece was wet. I said, well, Lord, if you want me to go back and take the camp, work at the camp, then you take that sail and turn it around and give it back to us. That was on Sunday. And Tuesday, I talked to Dad again by ham radio. He says now it looks like there's a possibility of the camp being purchased. Within 3 days, the Lord had answered the fleece. I started selling everything. Of course, it didn't. It took 3 months to get. But I did. I started selling my house. I had about 12. Dog had just had puppies. I had about 12 puppies. 2 horses, a house that I just finished building, and I hadn't even lived in 6 months. And everything. And over that process, I sold everything and left with a trunk and a barrel, and moved up here. And actually that was in January, the end of January that happened. We actually didn't get the sale finalized until May, I believe it was, like May 5th or something like that. But I knew that the Lord wanted this place back in the hands of the Lord. And I heard the dream didn't surprise me, to tell you the truth, after what the Lord had really interceded in my own life. And I was just really excited, so excited. I mean, I sold everything. If the thing fell through, I don't know what would have happened, except I knew that that's what the Lord wanted to do. I was convinced that was going to happen, and it did. And I guess the Lord planted that seed of faith in my heart that was going to happen. And what I found was many people like Rose and many others of you were praying that the camp would continue. And this is the Lord's place. This is the Lord's ground. It's almost holy ground. And the Lord says, no way, this is mine. I'm going to continue. And Lord willing, this will continue until the Lord comes back. And really is a place that leads people to the Lord and helps them grow. And I'm just excited about that. And one other thing, and I know it's long, but I want to tell you one other situation the Lord intervened. We were making that movie. Remember the movie we made? And Jerry and I and a couple other people had gone on the Ospey River. And we were taking pictures. And I always tell when the canoes come down the whitewater, we're doing whitewater canoeing, taking pictures of that. And we said, now in no case, if a canoe is already tipped over, do you come down next? You wait until that people are out of the water. Well, just like kids, they didn't. One canoe tipped over, and the kids jumped upstream like they're supposed to. And the canoe went down and kind of went into the water, into the rocks, and bent up a little. But the next group came down, and they tipped over too, except a few of the kids were still in the water. I can't remember the kid's name. It wasn't Tom. There was a kid that was Bob Hale. Bob Hale was pinned between the rock and the canoe. The canoe came down and pinned him against the rock. His glasses fell off. The water was up to his neck. And this is dangerous business. There's a lot of risk taken around here. And we had extra people on the trip to just because of taking the movies, extra adults. And as the canoe filled up, he got pressed against a rock and started to lose consciousness. We talked to him, we kept on going. We get everybody out there, as many as we get in the river to try to lift the canoe, and we couldn't get the canoe off him. He was going down, basically progressive. And I said, well, here, Lord, you got to step in. So I told Jerry, my brother was there with him, I said, you grab him. I said, I'm going to lift the canoe off him. And I said, in the name of Jesus, I lift this canoe. I lifted the canoe off him. The 5 of us couldn't get off. Jerry pulled him out, and we got him up. You need to know that the Lord, this is the Lord's place. The Lord cares, and the Lord provides. And only by the power of the Lord are we here, and only by the power of the Lord we continue.
So neat to hear about the miracles that God has performed in order to keep his hand on this place. And we ladies are the little sisters of our 50-year-old brothers over there. And I would like to ask them a few questions. And Bonnie, I'd like for you to tell us, what do you think is unique about a girls' camp? Why is it different than a boys' camp?
Wow. Becca said she knew the question ahead of time. She's prepared. I didn't know the question. My daughter says be sure to keep it short. Now, the difference between the boys and the girls' camp, is that the question?
Girls in the girls' camp, boys in the boys' camp.
Well, see, okay, that's a simple answer. Is that short enough? Anything else you'd like to read to say?
You tell us what are some of your memories that are special to you?
Okay. I think there's a camaraderie that girls have with one another and all kinds of things that is just different than men. Maybe men don't become as good friends, and men don't have as many friends. But I heard a preacher say that, so I'm not saying that. In fact, my preacher said it recently in our church in Charlotte, North Carolina. He said, we need to take a lesson from the ladies that they spend more time with each other and just are good friends. And I spoke this morning about that's one of the most wonderful things about being here and coming back. I was here in '66 as a waterfront director with my 2 young children, and then I came back. Bobby Hackman suggested I come back. I think it was a year after we had reorganized. I came back in '75, and Bob here was the director, and was here through '77. But such special friendship. Someone was saying today about Karen Nelson on the waterfront. And I said, oh yes, she was such a good friend. Of course, Sharon Tomasian has been real close to me. I still have her letters written to me on toilet paper. And she even apologizes because she isn't used to typing on TP. But anyway, I've got all of those. Mary Beth was in the Impala cabin when I was here and then became a CIT. Sharon Crawford will tell you that she came in as an archery instructor and was that for 1 week and became my trip director. So the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I really have to thank Dear Run, just like Bob. I was at Grace College and Seminary teaching and running camps for the college, water ski camps, cheerleading camps, tennis camps. And some problems had come up with facilities because the men wanted all the facilities for their basketball camps. So I told the dean, I said, either I get the tennis courts at these hours or I won't have girls camp anymore. This was at the college. And I prayed about it and I said, I just feel like that we need those tennis courts for a tennis program. Well, the dean never got back to me, and Bob called me, and Bobby called me, and asked me if I would come to Deer Run. And so, to the amazement of the administration, I said, well, I guess I won't be back this year. And they thought I would never do that. No, I wouldn't do that. But I had prayed about it, and the Lord just opened the door to come to Deer Run. And I said, okay, Lord, it was sort of like the police I put out. If someone else asks me to do something this summer and to serve the Lord that way, I'll do it that way. And so that's why I came. And I have my youngest daughter here, who was 9 and 77, and all of my children benefited so much from this camp and learned skills and friendships that they still carry today. I think for all of your children, and you know that, some of my campers are sending their children. What does that make me? A grandmother, a camp director? And I just praise the Lord for that. But I think girls have a wonderful time with each other and laughing, and the guys do too. I'll just say one more thing I told this morning, and I'll tell because Miles is the one that got the guys to do this. But I will have to say our girls have been putting toothpaste all over the guys' cabins when they could, throwing the mattresses on the roofs, putting peanut butter on either the toilet seats or the knobs of the to get in. Taking their clothes, and when it was raining, putting them all down in the mud at night so that they'd have to get up and wash them. And so, I'll never forget when Miles got up and he said, and the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron to stretch out his hand and tell them to come up from the ponds and the streams. And the frogs came, and they came upon the land, into the homes, into the bedrooms, into the palaces, and so on, he went on. And that's what they did, collected about 300 frogs, and they put them in the white-tailed hats and all the cabins. And I'm sure that the guys went to him and said, what can we do to them that is legal or something? And so these frogs were in beds, they were in everything, in the toilets, in the sinks, in the clothes. One of the girls told me today that a week later they heard this croaking and got out of bed and got on. There was a real tiny little one that was about ready to die, but he was under there. So we did have a marvelous time.
Becca, I would like to ask you, why do you think that campers need camp? And besides that, you know about some of the traditions that Deer Run has carried on from Bobby's time and Bonnie's time, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about those traditions.
I'm going to start with traditions. When I came to Camp Deer Run back in 1978, I was here 5 years as director. I'd never been here as a camper or a counselor, and I came in as director, and I remember talking to Bob on the phone, and he told me about the camp, and I said, oh, it sounds like a nice camp. Then he sent me some information about the camp because I was going to be director, and I go, this is a nice camp. And then he sent me, I think it was a video or a film or something, and I watched it, and I said, oh my gosh, this is a really good camp. What am I in for? I'm in over my head or something. And it was just really exciting. But when I came, I sought out other people to find out what the traditions were. And I remember asking Becky Kesley and saying, what do you do here every year? What's special that makes it special? And I remember asking Becky and some others. And things about Deer Run that are so neat are like the roses, getting the flower after 5 years. I remember, people would come back just, because that was so special to be numbered among the ones that were able to get a rose, and then after that, a rose and a carnation every year. Birthday skits. Some of these things were already mentioned in the song earlier, birthday skits. Sometimes I wish my birthday was in the summer just so I could get one of those skits. They're so good. Yeah, that's true. Other times I thought, no way. Other, nice traditions, the jennies at the tables, and just so many other things that make camp so special. I think the candlelight ceremony, the Vespers, and those things of just getting together. There's so many things that make this camp so special and so unique, and that's great. So the other question is, why is camp so good? And I could go on and on and on, because I believe in the holistic perspective of camping, and that camping is good socially. You make great friends, you learn teamwork, you learn how to get along with other people. It's good mentally, and then it's challenges us to think in a lot of different areas about God, about creation, learning new skills. It takes some mental concentration. It's great physically, getting out there and hiking or swimming and all the different things. Of course, spiritually, this is a wonderful place because so many other camps don't have that spiritual component where we can learn and grow more about our Lord. And then lastly, emotionally, just growing as people and our self-esteem. So holistically, it's great. Now, I wanted to read something about why camping is good, or something to that effect. And it says this: in these days of changing ideals, when Christian principles are being shattered on every side and true values in life are being constantly ignored, we are faced with the problem of training our youth in Christian leadership. The summer camp has become one of the greatest agencies in preparing and building our youth for the future. Here, the child, under careful and wise leadership, can learn to live in God's outdoors and to appreciate the work of the Creator. He or she can delight in blazing new trails through the woods. The camper has the opportunity to learn the art of swimming and life-saving, develop talents in creation of various objects and hobbies. Today as never before, there is a place in New England for a camp that will combine the spiritual as well as the physical needs of our youth. Camp Brookwoods and Deer Run is designed to meet this challenging need, and that was written in 1944 by Doc A. Wow. That was put together in the Weather Vane newsletter. I guess it was found, and just talking about the fact that it is a timeless thing. And I was glad to be a part of it for 5 years, and glad to be here today.
Miles has often said to us in the wintertime when we're here, as we're waiting for enrollment to pick up, and hoping that the campers are going to come in, and and then Deer Run will begin this long waiting list about February. And you're right, women network. The girls know who's coming back, and You know, they know long before, you know, who's going to be here during the summer. And I think that's one of the reasons we're full. But Miles will remind us that that's not really why we're full. The reason we're full is because the girls want to meet the boys, and the boys want to meet the girls. And, you know, the parents want all these wonderful things for the, you know, their growth, but the kids come to be together. And Cheryl, you were here as you were here during the transition from being totally separate camps to becoming much more of a co-ed camp, and yet maintaining some of our uniqueness. Would you speak to just your memories and how that all came about?
That's a very good question. I think what it got down to was practicality. I think it took a lot more effort to keep them apart than to let them be together. Especially with the CITs. It was just so much work to keep campers separated with separate meals, separate age peers, separate everything. It was just so much effort. I think we got to the point where, why? Why are we separating them? So, and I think there was concerns, you know, what if we do put them together? What's going to happen? Are they going to go crazy? But what it got down to, I think, was an agreement that this would be a great, healthy environment for campers to understand about relationships. That this would be a neat place for them to understand. They've got excellent role models. You know, we've got marriages here that last forever. This is the only place in the country I know where you hear of 40 and 50-year marriages. This is something I'm unfamiliar with in California. So it's for campers to see healthy, strong relationships, have those as role models, and have under supervision, you know, activities together, meals together. I think it's just wonderful. And I think that's the point where we got to where it's good to put them together, keep an eye on them, but it's good to keep them together.
Christy, you were a CIT director at one point in time, and we at Brookwoods and Andreson feel like our CIT program is one of our jewels. It is something that we're very proud of, and you saw the results this evening as they waited on your tables. They're very special kids. And Christy, I'd like for you to talk about why we feel that that's important to us, why we feel it's important to have 16 and 17-year-olds here at camp.
Well, I am definitely a product of all the dreams and the visions and the prayers going way back. I started as a camper as an Impala, and then CIT, and then counselor, and then director. And from talking to other people that and the history and heritage of the camp, the CITs, when they first came to camp, first part of camp, were a part of the service. And they came to learn a servant's attitude and serve the counselors and serve the campers. And in the 70s, the CIT program became more of a leadership development program. And when I was a CIT and also as director of the CIT program, our focus was looking at the CIT program as a mission field and also as a training ground, where we looked at each person coming in and saying, well, this person may or may not know Christ, and we can share that with them, and then also maybe be preparing a future leader for somewhere, whether it's here or whether it's, you know, in some foreign country. And our methods for doing that became the outdoor program that was talked about. The Allagash trip, the Shibugamu, the hiking, the ropes course, the apprenticeship week. And as all those things were integrated, and we shared our lives with the CITs that were with us for a summer, we started to break down the barriers and help them redefine what they were capable of and what they were made of, and tried to help them reach beyond what they saw as their finite self to a God that created and authored their life. And the most stunning example of the CIT group and the impact it had on me and also on others was the group in 88 and 89, when I was one of the two directors of the program. And one of the campers, Rob Bach, was diagnosed with cancer. And to watch the group of kids really support one another, encourage one another, following Rob's examples, he said, I really choose to live my life to glorify God, and how can I do this? And through the process of about a year and a half, he battled, it became clear that God was preparing the way to take him home. And it was really challenging, because he then decided, well, if I can't live to glorify God, I'm going to die to glorify God. And I still had the benefit and the honor and the privilege of maintaining those relationships with those CITs as they were counselors. And with them, redefined our whole vision of God, our whole relationship with God, not according to our own expectations, but according to the character of God as we looked him in the face and learned more about him.
We would like to thank you all very much for being here this evening, for making the effort to be here. You all are you are our history, you are our heritage, you are our leadership. And we are thankful to God for the fact that he's placed each one of you here at different times to carry on that torch. Thank you.
I would like to take a moment and speak a word of appreciation to a lot of people, the CITs, Mary Beth, David, a lot of other folks that have been working hard to pull this off. And believe me, it's been a lot. It's been an incredible staff that's been performing double duty. They've been doing everything under the sun with a smile, a little tired, a little weary. We still got to go back to, those kids you sent to us. But they have done a great job. And then I'd like to say a word about our Board of Trustees who've been working diligently. Where back when we first thought about 50 years, and that we talked about it at board meetings and trying to put together something that would be feasible, challenging, rewarding, and to give Brookwoods and Deer Run their rightful places, in the annals of camping. And so that has transpired. And so what you see is what we have here. And also at this time, I want to just take a moment to honor a few people. First of all, we would like to honor the folks that were just up here, the directors. And in behalf of that, we have a picture taken a year or two ago of the Brookwoods and Deer Run, the waterfront and that. And for their labors and for their ministry and that. And I'm going to ask each of you if you would come up at this time. First, let's start with Bonnie Messner. Bonnie, will you come up here again? She is the one who has tied it all together, pulled it all together, solved all the problems, all the headaches, tried to take input and output, and so that we can connect with you folks. And Cheryl has done a terrific job. Thank you. Jegley. George Jegley. Bob Bennett. And Doc Menzel. I guess there's no picture or anything. You can say thank you for all that you've done for us and just the efforts you've made to come out here. And then we have a couple more. As I said, the word has been spoken and Dr. Andreson, on behalf of all of us here, this is a picture we've seen many, many times, and you saw it at the beginning, and because of your wisdom, we are here tonight. Thank you. And seeing that it's been my privilege to work under Dr. Andreson and Christian camps and conferences. George, you need to come up and get a picture. Are grateful to God that He still uses human beings to get His work done. I mean, we've been privileged to be part of that.
This is a rare privilege and something that I haven't seen yet to happen at Brookwoods, and I've got the privilege of doing it. You know, through our lives, well, I'm going to go on the Bennett tradition here. I'm going to lose it too. Through our lives, the Lord provides so many role models for us. And we have a couple here who has worked here since 1957, whose lives have spoken to, excuse me, every one of us in this room. For Grace, the thank you I guess we all want to express to you is that you have always been behind the scenes. Watching over the past 9 or 10 days, I've never seen exactly what goes on, and now I have seen it. When things look calm out here, it's because there's activity going on in there. Grace's kitchen turns into an office and an accounting office. It's incredible. She has everything organized. She's phenomenal, and she is the strength behind what goes on here. Secondly, Miles, I have to tell you a story. 2 years ago, my regional manager asked me how I learned to manage. And I had the privilege of saying, you know, you're not going to believe me, but it came from a camp director. And the way I've learned is from Miles. He's taught me servanthood. He's taught me to do the same things or not to ask anyone to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. And that came from these two wonderful people. So please join me in honoring them tonight.
I became speechless last night when Lee Foster arrived. And I just saw the joy in his face and just that he was home and just felt a part of Brookwoods again. And then Uncle George came and Dave. And from then on, I just said, any work we've done has just been so worth it. And God just has been good to let us be here. And permission for doing something that we love and just seems to get better and better. But we thank you for your prayers. That's what keeps Brookwoods the way it is. And there are many times that the temptation is to go another route, take the easy way out, not to stand firm with the values that we have experienced over the years, and it just is not worth it. And the Lord has blessed, and He's going to continue to bless. And He doesn't need us. He picks different ones for different times, and I think it is so exciting to just see that lineup of servants that He has chosen in His time for that particular period of time. And no matter what your talent, He will use it. And just, you need to open up your hands and say, just use me in whatever way. But this is complete surprise. Cheryl did not check that out. Thank you.
For those of you who've seen the 1956 movie, I believe it is, remember the chapel scene where I think JJ's even in there, ducking and praying and bowing his head. Dr. Bob Lamont has been associated with camp for many years, and he's going to bring us Bob to the close, and then Bob, when you're finished, if Bob Sturtle would come to close in prayer, and for those who can still stand after that, we're going to have a candlelight service like we've done before, and I'll pick that up after Bob prays.
Our relationship with this camp goes all the way back to our high school. Starting here at a camp. It's in Alton, New Hampshire, and why don't you stop and see us sometime? And she enclosed a picture of herself on the most awful-looking horse you ever saw in your life. And on the back of it, she put the old hag on the nag. The following summer, I was to preach up in Toronto, Canada, and we got in touch with them and said, well, we'll stop by. We'd like to see where you are. That's 1945. It's August. We came up here. I think we got in on a Friday. Dr. Andreson's here, and so is Dougie, and a few handfuls of people. And they say, Bob, it's your turn to preach. I'd never been asked. So I preached. And I preached here for over 20 years, from 1945. I haven't been paid yet. I'm waiting for The only time I didn't preach here was when I was at Park Street, and the treasurer's over there. He signed my checks, and we used part of those checks, or all of them really, to help pay the mortgage on the property just behind your boathouse that we own and have lived in and enjoyed over all these years. So that's the background. And I know it's terribly late. There are 3 words that I want to leave with you. First was a time in Samuel's life when he looked back and he said, hitherto hath the Lord helped us. Gee, if we haven't heard that message tonight, we just haven't been listening. Hitherto. There was a time when Jesus took a towel and girded himself and knelt down and washed the feet of his disciples, and they were so surprised at this act of servanthood that they didn't really know how to handle it. And Jesus said, what I do thou knowest not now, but thou wilt know hereafter. And that's what George Bennett was saying. And that's what Larry Andreson was saying. That providence is much more a hindsight doctrine. As you look back, you understand how God has led. Meanwhile, you move by faith because you believe the God who leads.
And as they looked back, and they saw that role model in the Savior, it dictated a whole new way of life. And that's why they were called Christians. Hitherto hath the Lord helped us. What I do thou knowest not now, but thou wilt know hereafter. And Paul, who was an older man, I'm now 75. I've never been this old before. And he's thinking of a young friend. His name's Timothy. And he tries to sum up what life is all about, and he says, the time of my departure or my death is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I've finished the course. I've kept the faith. Will you remember? If life is a battle, you fight it. If it's a race, you run it. If it's a trust, you keep it. Henceforth, he said, in that kind of obedience, God has laid up for me a crown which the righteous judge shall give to me, and not to me only, but to all those who love his appearing. Will you remember those words? Hitherto, all the history we've lived tonight. Hereafter, that theme of understanding and wisdom that comes and you look at the direction of God in your life. And that promise that henceforth there is a crown. Just this one other sentence. It's a time of transition. There is new leadership being fed into the leadership here. And I have for you one of the most incredible promises in all of God's Word. It comes from Ezekiel 36:11. I will do unto you better than at your beginnings, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. That's my wish for you. That's my prayer. God bless you.
It's been quite a night, hasn't it? It's almost humbling to sit here and stand and you see the role models that were lined up here, the role models that are sitting over there. I'll tell you a quick story. What my day is like. Debman and I got up early this morning, we dressed, and one of the tasks that we had on our list today was to deliver some packages to some special people. We drove over to a lawn household this morning, and we gave the packages, the registration packages, to the Lawns and the Linzells, and they invited us in. And handed the envelope to Dr. Vaughn. And the first thing he said was, "Oh, good, these are all the payments for the town site." But then they invited us in and had us sit down. And he had a prayer for us, too, and a prayer for this day. And that was just really special for the Brookwoods family. And how important this day was to a lot of us. So let's close in prayer. Lord, you have provided just some wonderful experiences tonight that we can learn from, that we can enjoy hearing about. Lord, you provide some building blocks for the next 50 years of camp. You provided role models for us. You provided laughter and fun. Lord, you provided your Son to die on the cross to save us from our sin, which is what it's all about. Lord, thank you so much for giving us such humbling experience tonight. Thank you for giving us these role models, these visionaries. Thank you for giving us loving families. Thank you for giving us a special place called Brookwoods. In Jesus' name, amen.
We're going to close tonight by recreating one of the favorite camp traditions, I think, at the end of each month, which is a candlelight ceremony. And I know it's been long, and if those of you who have passed the point where you want to continue, feel free just to stay, and once we've exited, you can move out and head home. But for those who'd like to participate, we'd like to continue. And what I'd like to do is have all of the directors again from Brookwoods and Deer Run over to this door. And Doug and JJ, if you would also join that group, and Miles, and move out and light some candles. There will be candles at the door as I dismiss you by years of involvement with the camps. And then you can meet one of these folks as you go on out down the path that the luminaries are lit to light your candle and move on down in the front line. And Sharon Tomasian, I think if you can lead that group, be the first candle down, that would be great. What I'd like to do is I will basically call up in order those of you who've been involved with the camp for 5 or less years. And by involvement, I mean if you're here with someone who has come for that as a guest, whatever setting, go with that person, whoever is here that you're with. And but for those who are here for 5 or less, and then for 10 and under, and we'll kind of work our way up so that those who are here the fewest number of years will go first, and then those who've been here and associated with the camp the longest period of time will file out at the end. You'll light your candle from the group that's just exited, walk on down the lawn and form a line from the left side of the lawn around the flagpole to the right, and we'll sing Amazing Grace together, the first and last verses. JJ will offer a prayer, and then we'll slowly blow out the candles from those who've been here the fewest years to those who've been here the longest, and that will close out this ceremony. And if you're still with us, I think there's going to be ice cream back in here. That's a new twist. So let's start, and those of you who have been here or with guests, our guests are people who've been here for 5 or less years or have been involved with the camp in some way, shape, or form for 5 or less years. You can go ahead out now. Okay, those who've been associated with the camp for 10 years and under, or involved with the camp for 10 years and under, if you would form a line and continue on.
light. Let it shine for all. Let your good deeds glow for all to see, so that they will praise your heavenly Father. And you need to remember that and do that as well. God's grace is a wonderful thing. Let's sing Amazing Grace, and then I'll lead in a word of prayer, and then you can blow the candles out one at a time, as we go. Do it quickly so we don't have to stay out here that long. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been dead 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we know and say to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Lord Jesus, we thank you that you are the light in our life, that you are the light of the world, that you are the light in heaven itself. We praise you for that light that brings us truth, that brings us life, that gives us hope, that allows us to know the surrounding of your love and your light in us. Father God, help us to keep the torch of that light you have given to us burning, so that all may know that Christ is living, is alive, is living forevermore, that he is the King of the universe, the King of all creation, and the King and the Lord of our lives. Father God, help us not to be ashamed to let our light shine in the world. Help us, Father, to lift you up in all that we do. Help us not to be ashamed to name your name. Father God, help us to confess quickly that sin which would dim our lights. We just praise you for light in this time. We just give you the honor and the glory and the praise for everything that we are and everything that we hope to be. Thank you for this time together. Thank you that from the lakes and from the hills and from the skies, we can know that you watch over us, that we can know that you are close to us, that you continue to be the light in our path, the direction that we need.
Where's the M&M?
Guys, careful, you're on film.
There's strawberry topping down there too. All right? Oh, shit, what are
Folks, can I have your attention? If you need a shuttle service up to your car, just meet over at that side and Chad will be taking a van load up to your cars if you need shuttle service.